When we are working with inverses, there's a few things we can take a look at. The first thing we're going to look at is the equation of the inverse. So if we have y equals 2 times quantity x minus 1 squared plus 3, first thing I need to do is switch my x and y values. So when I do that, I end up having x equals 2 times quantity y minus 1 squared plus 3. In order to solve for y, and now I'm going to use PEMDAS backwards. So the plus 3 that I have on the right side of the equation, I need to get rid of that first. So I'm going to minus 3 from both sides. That is going to give me x minus 3 equals 2 times the quantity y minus 1 squared. The next thing I need to do is take care of the 2 that is being multiplied to the set of parentheses. To get rid of that and to undo that process, I'm going to divide both sides by 2. When I divide both sides by 2, it cancels out from the right side, and those reduce down to 1. And now I have x minus 3 over 2 on my left equals quantity y minus 1 squared. Now to get rid of or undo the square root, or the square on the right side, I'm going to square root both sides. Now in this step right here, since I am squaring something y minus 1, whether that's a positive or negative number does not matter. So when I take the square root of it, I can get both the positive and negative values. So taking the square root of both sides, I can have both positive and negative, the square root of x minus 3 over 2. That leaves me with y minus 1 equaling plus or minus the square root of x minus 3 over 2. Also notice that the square root symbol is covering both the numerator and denominator. Now that I'm adding 1 to both sides to get rid of the 1 by the y, I'm going to get y equals, you can write this in 2 different ways, 1 plus or minus, it's a positive 1 because I added 1 to both sides, the square root of x minus 3 over 2, or you could see it written as 1 plus or minus the square root of 3, x minus 3 over 2, and then a minus, or positive 1 rather, over here. Now, when we're doing this second version here, we need to make sure, this version right here, we need to make sure that we are keeping the positive 1 outside of the square root symbol. We do not want it underneath the square root symbol. Another possibility that we can take a look at is a table. So if we have an XY table, and I'm just going to put in some points here, so we have these points. The same process is going to happen here with what we did before of just switching our x and y values. So we used to have the point negative 2, 3 for our original, and now for the inverse, we're just going to switch our x and y values. So we're going to get 3, negative 2. So if the original was negative 1, 6, the inverse is going to be 6, negative 1. If the original was 0, 9, it's going to be 9, 0. And lastly, if we had 1, 12, it would be 12, 1. Again, simply just switching the x and y values. The last instance we're going to take a look at is if we have a graph. So this is a parabola, and what I'm going to be doing with this parabola is reflecting it over the line y equals x. Now, whether or not you like reflecting it over that line, one of the easiest ways is just to think back to the last part when we're looking at a table. If the coordinate of this point right here is negative 2, positive 1, that means the inverse of that point is going to be a positive 1, negative 2. Taking a look at this coordinate point here, we have negative 3, positive 2, so the inverse is going to be positive 2, negative 3. Then with this point up top here, we have negative 4, positive 5. So I'm going to have positive 5, negative 4. That is the bottom half of that. or as I talked about in the very first part, we needed the plus or minus. That would be the negative square root. To get the top half, I'm now going to figure out these points here. That was the point -1, +2, which would coincide right there, and the point 0.5, which would go with 5, 0. And that is how we can figure out the graph of the inverse.